Hello friends, good morning. Welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since we spoke last and I owe you a couple videos. I hope you guys are all doing well. And for my people that are in the winter months right now, I feel for you. It has been brutal. But soon enough we'll slip into spring and after that summertime. So hopefully we'll get a lot of sun, be revitalized, and get everything popping that we've been wanting to do while we were hibernating. So I hope the beginning of the year has found you guys very well. This video here, I wanted to talk about the Spider-Man video. A lot of you guys have made your way over to the Decent Director YouTube page, and I thank you guys all very much for that. I wanted to share how I made the Spider-Man video in Blender and then also taking it to Premiere and After Effects to put those special finishing touches on it. In the beginning of the Spider-Man video, what I was going for is some really cool camera movement more than anything. And I wanted it to be a little bit more interesting than your conventional static camera following Spider-Man's every move. Usually a wider shot to see actually what he's doing. But I thought this would be really cool if we just kind of like put the camera on top of him and then allow him to do the motion and then follow along with him. Wasn't really sure how that was going to come out, but I was very happy with the final result. So the idea there was that Spider-Man, the Spider-Man figure from the Homecoming movie, if you guys are familiar with that and you guys are Spider-Man fans, the ones that have seen the video, undoubtedly. That trilogy there with Tom Holland, the first movie was Homecoming, and he's wearing the suit from Tony Stark. That's probably one of my favorites. I've shared a couple videos where I've run into him at the Disney parks and also on the Disney Cruise Line, and they really did an awesome job with that particular character. He's probably one of my favorites. Of course, I'm a big fan of the Tobey Maguire. That was the first live action movie that I got to see, so big fan of that and how that came out. Shout out to all the production people on that movie. Let's talk a little bit about how we came to find this particular model. If you go to some of the awesome 3D websites where people are sharing their models, this particular one that I came across was absolutely spectacular, down to the fibers. I mean, this individual that shared the model, and I'll share the link below, did an incredible job not only rigging it, but the model detail was spectacular. So the best part about this one was that it was free. So I downloaded this model and then tried to rig it myself with a couple different elements. Now, many of you know that I'm not very savvy when it comes to 3D animation or modeling or rigging or anything like that. This is all new to me. So I'm just kind of jumping into this for the first time. I've always been captivated by animation, but it is a separate skill set altogether. I went to film school, but I did not go for animation, and we never even touched on that. Leaving film school, I barely knew how to edit, so you can deduce how much work it's taken me to not only learn how to edit just a little bit, formulate different shot selections, also use some of that know-how and then bring it into 3D, which to me, huge learning curve. It's been like climbing Mount Everest, but I'm giving it a shot and I find it to be super awesome. One of the things that I love about Blender is that it's open source. So if you have a computer that is pretty robust, once again, talking about memory and hard drive capacity, you should be able to check out Blender and at least give it a test drive. If nothing else, go through one of the shorter tutorials where they teach you a short 10-second animation and see how the test drive feels. I definitely think for the people that have been interested in 3D modeling or some animation that you will love Blender. The user interface for Blender is pretty intuitive. If you've worked with 3D programs in the past, then you'll find some of the controls and the camera setups and the timeline to be very similar. So as far as the user interface goes, I would rate it pretty highly compared to, let's say, Cinema 4D or Maya. And Maya, I'd love to talk to in a separate video. That is a monster compared to Blender. I would start with Blender. The cost to entry is nothing. It's a free open source software, and I'll link in the description below some of the places where you can get some of the models. Some of them are rigged, and you can start doing character modeling or also create some of your own 3D content, whether that be a landscape or a small advertisement or even a ball bouncing. You'll find so many resources on YouTube, and I can't stress it enough. If you're into animation, check it out. So we started with the Spider-Man character, and I brought that character over to Mixamo. For those of you that are not familiar with Mixamo, Mixamo is a great way to get your character rigged. Now it focuses 100% on bipeds, that is human characters that walk on 2 feet, and you can take your character in if it's not rigged and rig it. Not only that, you can take it a step further, and they have pre-made selections of different movements that your character can do within your project. For instance, you can have Spider-Man swinging, or you can do, in my case, I used Spider-Man doing a flip. You can even have Spider-Man salsa dancing. It's a great resource for someone that is starting out because, like I said, it helps you rig the particular character and put some movement into it without having to do it frame by frame, step by step, especially if you've never done anything like this before. So it's a nice way to kind of wade into the water and try things out. So we got the Spider-Man figure, then we took it into Mixamo. We were able to generate the flip. Now, I'm oversimplifying it, guys. For me, as I mentioned in a video in the past, I'm on a Mac, so a lot of the things may be designed for PC versus Mac, and you'll find some of the things don't translate perfectly. But in this case, I was able to get this particular model working. One of the things that I was not able to capture, and you'll see here, is that the eyes on the model were also rigged to open and close. And I just thought that was spectacular. But the roadblock that I was running into was that once I brought it into Mixamo, set it up with the particular actions that I wanted, took it back out, I no longer have the controls for the eyes. One individual on YouTube had mentioned you could separate it, create a mesh, and then later put the eyes back on. Now, that totally went over my head. I still am a little fuzzy about what that technique involves, and I hope to delve back in and try some of those things out. But I went the long road. I am a little bit more versed in using After Effects. So what I decided to do with the eyes, because I did want them to close slightly, is that I would replicate that feature by isolating the eyes. So I took the Blender copy, then I captured the eyes the way that I wanted them, basically frame by frame by frame. Then I took it into After Effects and then rotoscoped it out. So you can imagine, I went, what would have taken probably, let's say 5 steps, took me 25 steps. I always like to do things the long way, regardless of what the situation is. So this particular technique worked out for this video. I think the effect was achieved to some degree. Once you bring the eyes back into After Effects or a program like that, where you're doing some of the visual effects tweaking, it's a little bit difficult because you're going from 3D imaging back to 2D. And while you can set up your sequence or your video composition to have 3D components, this particular version of After Effects wouldn't allow me to get full 3D manipulation of what I was trying to do. So it took some fine tuning, did some masking, and as I mentioned, rotoscoped the eyes out, and for probably maybe a couple seconds here in this video, brought the eyes back in and have them shut ever so slightly. So that's something, because the suit is so dynamic in the movie, I was like, if I don't incorporate this little aspect, I feel like it would be an injustice to all my Spidey fans out there. So that's what I tried to do, and it took me forever, probably a couple days. So once again, you got to take time with this stuff, baby steps, and use the resources that are on YouTube. I'm looking up content all the time. I mean, it could be a single click of the mouse that it's completely going over my head. Some of the people that are on YouTube or giving some of these classes, they go at an accelerated pace, or they may miss a couple of components that I ultimately need to be able to finish this project and take it to the next level. So I hope this little bit of content is helping bridge that gap for someone that's a newbie to most of all of this stuff. And when you guys start your own projects, you guys will have these questions too, and that these resources will help. Once the model was done, I was able to bring the materials back into the character, because I was getting exports from Mixamo, just a gray character, no materials. So that is something that you'll have to learn very quickly, how to get the nodes, the material nodes, to be able to connect. A lot of people will put them in a separate folder, and very simply, it's very rudimentary, is that whatever folder they were saved on by the creator is not going to be the same folders that you have. And so that's where there is that disconnect, and you have to reconnect all of those materials so that your computer knows where to access them, and then ultimately be able to bring them on to your project. And that was a little bit of a struggle for me. Not all models are created equal. I found that out the hard way. This particular one was amazing, like I said. And once you get a feel for being able to connect the materials and textures onto your model, it's going to be pretty smooth sailing, and everything will start to look the way that you want it, or how you were expecting, instead of getting, sometimes you'll get a pink export, sometimes you'll get just a gray export of your character. Sometimes I've seen from other videos that you'll be able to export with the materials and textures linked in. That just wasn't working for me, so I'm giving you my personal story about how I went about things. So, got the materials locked in. I have the action that I wanted from the character. Now it was time to rig the camera. In 3D space, for all you gamers out there, the gaming element is very prevalent and very important for 3D modeling, and also when you're working in virtual production. It's going to take some time to learn. You have to be able to think in those terms, to be able to manipulate the camera the way that you want it, to manipulate the character the way that you want, and to be able to visualize what you will see once you bring up your video feed into the timeline and have the camera match up with the keyframes that you want to see in the end product. So what I've been told is that if you have a mouse that has the little scroll wheel, super helpful, and a left and right mouse click button. Where it was a little bit of a struggle for me is that I found myself like rolling the whole thing, mostly in Unreal Engine, not so much in Blender, But I use a magic mouse, and so the top of the magic mouse is just one button, and then you have to click on the left and click on the right, and it works as a left and right click, but slightly different because I don't have the scroll wheel, and I probably don't have all the settings that you would typically get right out of the box with you know, your regular PC mouse. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you are Mac based, that you may run into some of those challenges and have to set up the mouse to maximize those efforts so you don't get lost in your 3D world. We have the camera following the character pretty closely. Some might say it's even disorienting because it's such a weird choice to be following the character in such a tight 360 circle. But I hope that the end result was a little bit more dynamic. We have him flip, he lands, and what I had going on in the background is some old film that I color corrected in Adobe Premiere, and so that's the effect that you get in the background. I thought this is so different than just having him in a cityscape, you know, that it becomes a little bit more interesting, and it lent itself to the very close camera movement that we were capturing here. The next part took me a good while. Now, you may recognize a little bit of this footage from Spider-Man Homecoming. At the end of the movie, you'll see Tom Holland with Aunt May in the back, and she finds out that he's either dressing up as Spider-Man or he could potentially be the Spider-Man that everybody's been talking about. So I really like that scene, and I thought I had some fun with a video prior. For those of you that haven't seen it, I'll probably load that up as Ant-Man, and I called my character Ant Dan. So in this video, I figured I'll fill in for Peter Parker as Spider-Dan, and I'll be the one that's taking off the mask. The way that I went about this one was pretty challenging because while I tried to rotoscope it, it was too nuanced. There were the difference in size between Tom Holland and myself, of course, plays a role. And throughout that short clip of just a few seconds, as you can see, he moves a little bit. There's some breathing, and his shoulders are moving, and there is a little bit of camera movement as well. So to achieve this, I found myself editing frame by frame. So in effect, rotoscoping, but not being able to use the brush tools that are in After Effects. I was really just masking frame by frame by frame till I achieved the look that I wanted. The footage of me, I pretty much captured on a green screen and then just kind of rotoscoped my head out, put it on his frame, and then scaled it ever so slightly to be able to get a more true version of somebody wearing the mask that was my size. A little bit taller and slightly heavier than Tom Holland's character in the movie. So that's what we were going for here. So the background was a cityscape in New York, merged it all together, brought some camera movement in After Effects, and I think we achieved a pretty good result. You'll see that some of the footage is grainy, and that was something that I was hoping to capture. I put a little bit of flair, a little bit of grain. This was done to pay homage to the Spider-Man of the 1970s. I don't know if you guys have come across the late 70s Spider-Man live action TV show. Super campy. I definitely recommend it. If I can, I'll link it in the description below. But when I was a very young person, they were showing reruns of the show, and that was the first time that I saw Spider-Man as a real live action person scaling the wall and shooting like a rope out of his hand, and I just thought that was so fantastic. As a young person, I was watching the cartoons all the time because Saturday mornings were epic back then, and this live action dude comes on, and I was just like, wow, this is so cool. Now, I'm not talking about the Japanese version for the fans that have seen the Japanese version. That one is probably a little bit better than this one. I vaguely remember the live action version, the US live action version, but I had stumbled upon the trailer not too long ago, and I was like, oh man, I would love for some of the footage to look a little bit like that. So that was roughly what I was going for there. And then the little spider web that pops out at the end, and the note on the door. A shout out to Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, where you see him with a note. The friendly neighborhood spider. Dan was in the house today, and the old spider web was a tribute to the old Spider Friends, the Amazing Spider Friends, where the cartoon would come out on Saturday mornings in the 80s, and he was hanging out with two of my favorite characters, Firestar and Iceman, for all of you that remember that. And if you don't, I think Disney Plus still has it. Check it out. Fun cartoon. You get to see some of the old villains, some of the comic book characters come to life. The storylines are okay. It's dated. It's dated. What can I say? So that's it, guys. I hope this helped a little bit. If you guys have any questions, feel free to write a comment in the description below. If you're not signed up, I'd love for you to subscribe. I do have a couple more videos about this particular 3D content, my foray into this space, and everything video and pop culture related. So I hope you guys have a great day and an awesome week. Take care.